Welcome to Caffeinated Mornings, a show built around the idea of more conversation and less presentation. We dive deeper into discussions that go beyond the surface of the work. A big thank you to our sponsors who make this show possible. Today's episode is brought to you by the award-winning, strategically driven, independent, full-service agency TDA Boulder. And we can't forget Buckross Productions and Coop Studios for helping us capture and share this show with you. A special thanks to The Coffee Ride for keeping us caffeinated, and to Realtor Michelle Sander at Live Sotheby's Realty, CMDI Studio, Snappy Little Numbers for our theme music, and Pro Photo Rental for their continued support. In this episode, we join your favorite designer and host, Jay Farrakane, for an inspirational and thoughtful conversation with writer, designer, strategist, the mind behind Mortal Kombucha, and the creative director of The Feed, Becca Schepps. Becca shares her journey of finding her creative path, opens up about navigating bold branding, building from the ground up, and embracing chaos as a catalyst for innovation. It's a conversation full of laughs, insights, and those unfiltered moments that remind us that there's no one right way to build something great. So, settle in, top off your cup, and join us for a candid and caffeinated ride with the unstoppable Becca Schepps. Let's go.
Thank you for being here, Becca.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome to see you. Awesome to see you. If you guys don't know her already, Becca is one of those, I hate using this word, but I'm going to use it, hybrid kind of creative people. She's a writer, a really good designer, creative director, brand builder, activity enthusiast, and mom, and creative director at The Feed now. She's worked inside the world's top agencies, defined campaigns, delivered world-class creative, developed communications for many well-known brands, locally and around the world, and has founded her own brands and cycling teams. And so I've always thought that Becca's really...
That's like a lot of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff. And I'm going to continue to embarrass you, and then we're going to talk for one second. But I always thought that she's super funny, strategic, tactical, capable, and then she also has this ability to move between disciplines. And I'm fortunate because I get to work with you now, which is really fun. And I think whether you're copywriting, designing, giving feedback, sharing funny, kind of maybe slightly inappropriate things on your phone, launching startups, even riding bikes, there's this unmistakable through line of curiosity. And I think one of the things that's cool is you often have this ability to fight for things to be different, not for different sake, but because that's what the brand or thing in front of you needs. And I thought that was really cool. And I wanted to do this. Okay, I should have done, all my things, but the sound might not be working on this, but we're gonna take a look at some of her recent work. Oh. You did good. You sat through your own work, which is usually really hard.
I was like, man, I like it.
I know that's the hardest. So I think it's worth starting here. You and I met at another Boulder institution called the Donut Ride.
D-O-U-G.
D-O-G-G. Make sure you spell it right.
Yes.
And I have to mention, too, that you're a sort of caffeinated alumni. And I think it was funny because you spoke years ago with your partner, and we talked a lot about work and process, but we didn't really talk about you. And I thought it was funny because in the lead up to this, you said something super funny to me, that it was like, oh, this is the first time someone's ever interviewed me about things I'm good at.
Yeah.
Because we'll talk about Mortal and things like that.
Yeah.
But I feel like you've been on those kind of how I built this kind of podcasts and stuff around the business. But I think it's always fascinating for me to know where people come from and the backgrounds that shape them into the creatives today. So I kind of want to start at how you got started and the things that like made you described, and I got to learn about you in the lead up to this. Your early college path didn't really have much to do with creative, except the fact that it was fairly diverse. 3 degrees, that's showing off a little bit. Don't
Accidentally, though. I couldn't make a decision.
Poli-sci, art history, and Italian.
Yeah.
So what did the mix of disciplines teach you about yourself and why maybe creativity was a path?
If you just take classes that you like, and then you go to your dean and you go, whoops, I forgot to choose. Sometimes you checked all the boxes and you get 3 majors.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
that was all it taught me.
But I
do
think,
what you want to do.
Well, and I hear that, when you do a thing, like I loved art history and I probably took way too much of it, but I think for creative people in some weird way, it gives us an arena to draw from. And, like to this point of, you're going around doing these things you like and you're finding them. In that same phone call in the lead up on this, you were walking around because you were at your parents' house and you like grabbed that notebook of quotes that you had drawn and written and things like that. They were full of like hand-drawn typography, but they were also these kind of funny or poignant statements. And it feels like, that all for you probably started a really long time ago, but do you look back at any part of your childhood and you go, oh, it was kind of there all along? Do you feel like...
Yeah, I always liked making things, and even in high school, my teachers would call me the project queen because I never did anything very simply. So, even in like 3rd grade, we had to make a project of the counties of New Jersey. And I made a 4-foot puzzle, and my dad helped me like jigsaw the pieces. And then I had to figure out then I was very obsessed that I only wanted 4 colors and how many counties are touching. So I was always like very type A, and I needed to overdo any project. And in high school, even at times, teachers would be like, you don't need to take the test, just do a project. Because I would come in with like the most elaborate things ever.
But it's funny because I think you were building experiences probably even then,
I
right?
guess so. I just thought it was more fun to do a project.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as you're kind of like navigating your way through all that, creativity like obviously wasn't really a path that you had kind of initially considered. You had
I got into art school and I was scared to go.
Huh.
Which is, so it was Parsons and Micah, and I was scared to go to art school because that meant I could only choose art and I couldn't choose liberal arts, and I had a complete panic. And I was like, I don't know, I felt too limited.
Interesting.
So I didn't go to art school. And then I went to Wisconsin, and I was like, oh, shoot, I wish I could take some art. So I just took a lot of art history.
And I think that's really interesting how you find those ways.
Yeah.
But your Wisconsin school experience, I think it put you in some of your first jobs that made you really miserable too, right? Like you mentioned, literally crying at some of these jobs once you got out of school.
I did almost every job, but not in public.
Not in public. Okay, let's make that clear.
So my first job was doing PR, and maybe I kind of talked myself into graphic design at an architecture firm in Philadelphia. But architects are very hard to work for, no offense if anyone's an architect. And so I would go out in Rittenhouse Square during my 1-hour lunch break, and I would just watch the construction workers and the bike messengers who all got to be outside all day, and I'd cry. Outside of
I wish
anthropology.
I was here. Yeah. So those jobs kind of make you have this reflective moment, and we talked about. I actually think it's very difficult to find a traditional path to I'm working in creative now, whatever that looks like. It's so different. But there was a unique path for you. You ended up at SVA.
Yeah. So when I think all my bosses also knew I was miserable, even though I was jolly. And I
had a good attitude, but
I had a lot
miserable.
of free time, so I would just be, I guess Google was a thing. It was like early 2000s. And I would just be like, what should I do with my life? And the SVA had some classes at continuing education classes. And so I would take the train from Philly to New York and do these classes from 6 to 9:30 so you want to be in the creative department of an ad agency kind of things. And then one time a teacher... And then I would have to be at my job at 8 a.m. in Philly the next day. So it was like a long day.
That's a haul.
And I was living in between in New Jersey. And one day my teacher at SVA said, you're really good at this, but you're really tired. And I was like, oh, and they kind of showed me there was these portfolio schools. At the time, there was Miami Ad School, and there was the Creative Circus. And I went and told my mom, I have to go to a portfolio
And your mom
school.
had creative background too, right?
Yeah, she went to Pratt, and she was a fashion designer and graphic designer. And then she had a home dressmaking and business. And then turned into like a fiber artist. And my mom was like, you don't have to go to Creative Circus, like that's the stupidest name for a school. This isn't real. And she like just cold called like people at what Young and Rubicam was like, my daughter says she has to go to this. My voice like this sounds like mom's like a smoker. My daughter's got to go to this Creative Circus class or whatever. And we went down and looked at them, and then I ended up going. And that was like the best thing I ever did, because it was like, oh, it's very hard to describe to somebody what like you do in a creative department.
Right.
Even when now I'm
in
in-house at a brand, and even still trying to describe to my current bosses who are like the CMO and CEO what a creative department is.
Yeah.
It's very hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it is an interesting world, because like now you come out of Creative Circus. I want to talk about one thing that happens in that school that I think there was I call it the choice, because I think there was a part of like when you got in and they almost give you the option of like, hey, what do you want to be? Art director or creative or copywriter?
Yeah, you just have to pick.
And like, talk to me about the fear you faced in that choice.
Just like art school, I was scared to be an art director. So I was like, I like writing, because I really love words. I love reading. I love language. And I think I was just always very afraid of putting myself out there for writing never like made me afraid. Putting myself out there artistically drawing, there felt like there was more like rules of right and wrong. And I was just afraid of not being the best. So I chose copywriting.
Because you said that art direction felt really vulnerable to you.
It felt, more of yourself was out there. So I did that on the side.
But
I pissed off a lot of partners by micromanaging them.
But it's funny, in my experience with a lot of really strong copywriters and stuff, that it's not an uncommon thing that they have a point of view. And I do think if you look largely at the world of creative leadership, they usually come from writing backgrounds because they can articulate better. But like, it's cool to me that you have both tool sets. Yeah. And I just, looking at your work on a more regular basis these days, like, it's kind of like, I feel so like singular compared to that. And I do feel like I've always believed that, the more tools you have and experiences that creative people have, not only are you more valuable, but you're more able, because you have just a bigger tool set to solve problems. Yeah. And I don't know, I think that's an interesting place to be, because you mentioned to me one of the things that was on your mind in the last 5 years or so is you kind of had to start to really figure out where you sat as a copywriter. And you're like, is this limiting? Talk a little bit about like some of the decisions you've made in the last few years in terms of like, where am I going to go with this?
Yeah. Well, the best thing best and probably frustrating to, again, future partners of mine was when I was at Saatchi, my partner liked to drink a lot. And he would just like
I've never heard of this in the ad industry.
He would go and we worked on Miller, so there was like a keg that showed up at 4 p.m.
Oh my!
And then he would like just disappear, and then he would be late the next day, and oftentimes we would have to show work in the morning, or like it was Jerry Graff, and he would walk in and he'd be like, "Can I see those things?" And like they weren't made, so I had to start like learning how to use InDesign and Photoshop and finish the things. I don't know why I just didn't like tell on him. I did cry because of him a few times. But yeah, and so that made me be like, ooh, like kept me on my toes of like remembering how to use those programs.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I always kind of missed, even though I didn't miss the kind of psychological abuse from my partner, I did miss being able to dabble on both sides a little bit. And yeah, as I was kind of like always the copywriter at ad agencies, I started Mortal, which I did the visual stuff for. The cycling teams, I did all the visual stuff for. So anything that wasn't anything that paid me, I did visual stuff for. And as I was working in ad agencies, and you're just the writer.
Yep.
I was really lucky a few years ago to have a partner, and we just kind of had this mind meld, and we just created things together. And as I started to look at my career, and I was like, oh, am I going to stay here forever? Am I going to go somewhere else? But I'll always be a copywriter. And I worked with a life career coach that only works with creative people, or creative careers, which was really interesting. And we sat down and we spoke for, I think it was like 6 months. I met with her twice a week. And we kind of like, I was like, oh man, I have to, in order for someone not to just see me as a copywriter, for as long as I stay at ad agencies, I will always be the copywriter. And I don't know how many more manifestos I can write. And ChatGPT is doing them really well now anyway, so I gotta do something else. No, so we kind of were like, okay, well, what are the opportunities and who will let you lead visually? And at the time, the feed, which I was employee number 1 at 10 years prior, had come back, and we did these magazines, and we started doing these things where I got to like lead both sides again. And I kind of went to them and was like, you guys need a creative director. You want to hire me? I can do it all. And after like probably a year later after that, it kind of went in back there. And I was like, oh, I did this for them when I left Crispin. I went to the feed to start it, left for 10 years. And I was like, oh, they believe I can because I did it for 2 years for them at launch. And they hadn't changed everything in 12 years, which is crazy.
And I love hearing the story about your partner, and a lot of times this common story too, and with a lot of creatives is there's some forcing function that forces you into other avenues, right? Makes you tactical or whatever.
Yeah, tears.
Tears, they do. Fear makes it that way. But learning is something I think that happened. And I was on a project recently that forced me to. There's very minimal budget and not a lot of time, and so that meant I'm going to do it all too. So I've taught myself along the way to do some things I probably shouldn't have been doing. And I've watched you very recently dive into apps and programs and stuff that you're like, I'm like, I don't know, Becca should probably be hiring people to do that. But then you're kind of killing it in it too. And I think that it's interesting that like how much I realized in that past project that I really enjoyed learning. Still, and I think that's a core trait too to creatives. Has learning always been like a part of your creative process?
Yeah, I love figuring out if I can do something, and that it's a good transition to Mortal because that was like, can I do this? And Mortal started as like a pun and a website. It's a drink brand. It had a kombucha. Now it's a hydration drink, but as that grew and grew and grew, and I figured out beyond just like design, and I figured out freight logistics and accounting, and are you a cash or accrual? And
there's like a lot of business shit to learn.
Business
too.
shit.
Yeah.
When it all started exploding for, don't need to go into that because I don't want to cry here. No, but then I actually realized like just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yes.
But, and I wish I could hire people, but like that's my big, and I joked that I made a higher power promise after getting off the phone with lawyers talking about different types of bankruptcy, which Mortal's thriving, so don't worry about that.
There's just business stuff that happens along the way.
I made a higher power promise, because I'm not like super religious, but there's probably something. And I promised that I would stay in my lane, and I would never start something alone again. And if they let me get through this. And but my curiosity makes me be like, oh, maybe.
Yeah.
But I think curiosity is dangerous. But I can't stop. I like learning everything.
Yeah.
And I like knowing everything about everything.
But I do think that's an interesting management tactic, learning things like that, because I do quite a bit of web work, but the first agency I ever worked at that did web, we weren't allowed to design things we couldn't code. Now this is, in those days, you could go to a website and look in the backside and copy things out and make a button and do that kind of web building. But I think it shapes the way that you can manage other people or have discussions around, here's what I'm really trying to get to.
Yeah.
Because you have some familiarity with it. And you can also be self-effacing, be like, look, I suck at this, but here's what I did. And, I think it's an interesting management tool.
My spreadsheets, I learned, my brother said to me, who's a finance guy, he looked up some of my spreadsheets at Mortal and he said, Becca, colors have a purpose. Because I was just like color coding them so that they look like good. And then I was like, can you fix this pro forma? And there's like purple columns and green. And he's like, colors have meaning. And I was like, okay.
That's funny. Because I would think with your design background and your sensibility for aesthetics, you would apply the rules of that, but you're like, no, I'm going in
Yeah.
here and like, this is going to be a Renaissance piece or something.
Yeah. I did that with a Gantt chart the other day at work. I was like, I'm going to make a Gantt chart. And then I started coloring it. And then I was like, this is like not legible. It's just very pretty.
Yeah. But that
Yeah.
might get at least people to pay attention and ask questions.
Maybe you couldn't read it. Yeah.
So we can't gloss over Mortal. And it is interesting that you literally started that business from your kitchen counter.
Yeah.
Like I think I talked to you
the
about
basement of Grenadier.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
But you were literally like cooking tea and stuff like
Yeah.
that at some point. And I do think it's interesting thinking about like, I love hearing I think all experiences in design are like learning opportunities, right? And one of the things that you and I talked about is I think with your background in athletics, cycling, and then creative people too, I think our definition of failure is not like everyone else's in some weird way, because like even if you think about opening one a graphic design document or writing a brief, how many times you go back in and edit that, or is that considered failures? But how do you kind of define failure, or do you see it as a strength, or is it like shit, each one's different?
I think with failure, I think I didn't go to art school because I was afraid to fail. And I didn't go to the art director. I think I've gotten over that in my 40s.
Yeah.
So I think I like being curious and figuring things out more than I'm afraid of failing now. So yeah, I mean, with Mortal, there was a lot of failure and it was kind of fun and funny, very funny, but there was a lot of success. And I think something I don't do well still is I never celebrated the wins ever. So
I know you were quoting Bezos earlier, and I think isn't his famous ones celebrate wins for 1 second and move on or something?
yeah, I guess I'm very Jeff Bezosian.
Well, sometimes I think
I'd be like, that's cool. It's not enough. That would be
But
me.
one thing I do encourage creative people to do is like, we have a lot of ups and downs, right? I was actually thinking about your business counselor focused on creative, and talk about somebody who probably needs a drink at the end of the day. Can you imagine like counseling us for multiple times in a week? But
That's my husband.
I think Daniel's here. Is
Yeah.
he back there? Yeah. It is interesting to think in the world of failures, what you're going to do with them and how you take them along. And I'm like,
Brush them under the rug, compartmentalize, move on.
yeah, totally. I do think that is it's the goldfish mentality. Just have a short memory of it.
Yeah, I think, and it's been interesting, like, especially at the feed. I think it's a fast-moving organization, so we make a lot of stuff that never sees the light of day. That's like really pretty. Sorry, Daphne, I know. Or we start something and we do it and we're like, this is amazing, and then they like change the whole project and then we have to restart it again. And I think you just get very resilient to just like do it again.
Yeah.
Do it again differently. Do it again. And it takes me back to like at ad school where they'd be like, draw 50 thumbnails of this one thing. And they'd be like, okay, good, throw it out.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? In the beginning you get very precious and you're like, but this is my art. And as you kind of move on, you're like, okay, what else do you want?
Yeah.
Sure, I got more ideas. What do you want? What do you
I
want
think
now?
that convincing yourself that ideas are endless is like, it is a Jedi mind trick of some sorts, because you're like, I'm exhausted, I can't do more. And then the next thing you know, someone changes a little bit of the timeline or the requirements, and then guess what? The doors open again and it's a whole new thing, if you can kind of trick yourself into doing that. It was funny because like I think when we had the time that we connected around the donut ride and things like that, cycling was in some sort of golden era here. This is a few years ago. And I think you were kind of, what's that?
Decades ago.
Decades, yeah. I know, I thought about that. I'm like, wow, we're getting to those kind of talks now where I'm like, I remember when she was young. But you were coming out of ad world when you kind of landed back here, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I moved here to work at Crispin from New York. And I think I lasted at Crispin for 8 months.
your choice, their choice.
It was
mutual.
it was serendipitously not mutual. I couldn't handle it anymore. Found a new job, and I was gonna quit on Friday, and then I got laid off on Thursday
There you
with
go.
severance.
Nice. See? Handled it.
Yeah.
So I think at that time you were running La Sweat. LA Sweat? La
Yeah,
Sweat.
we just launched that too.
And then you're working with local brands like Panache, but Dawn's here.
Yep.
Stages. You were even there at the
Zumi.
very beginning of the feed. Like you said, you're
Yep.
employee one. What do you think made the scene then like such a natural playground for your particular talents? Like because I kind of have an idea, but like, what was it was about that?
No oversight. No one knew how to do anything. And I was like, I'll just do it. They let me I like figured out how to use like Facebook ads accounts and stuff like that. I don't know. Thank you, Dawn, for just letting me like make crazy sock memes.
That was the sock era too. There was a whole world of like.
Yeah. I don't know why all these companies just like were like, sure, Becca, go for it.
But I think that like permission or kind of open door, like let someone take the reins and go for it, to me is like a really amazing thing. Like I was trying to explain what it's like to work at the feed in your creative group. And I do think that, Daphne has been doing what she's been doing for a long time, super talented, but you have a group of people that are fairly autonomous.
Yeah.
There is an upper thing, but you let them kind of do their things and then go check on them and do that kind of, so it's not unguided. But to me, like, I think I see the best creative come when there's a little bit of like responsibility or autonomy given to people. And I don't know why it doesn't happen more, but
it would be nice if it happened more.
Yes.
No,
Yeah,
I think you hire people because you trust them to do something, and then you have to trust them. And if you don't, it becomes stifling, or you limit, and not just stifling for the person, but you actually limit what you can create and the places you can go.
yeah.
So, you hire people because you like their brain or you like their talent, or, you like something about the way that they see the world, and they put it down on screens in different size squares and rectangles. And I like letting people do that and bring their point of view, and then, kind of acting like the client on top of them, to being like, logo's not there. Where's the button?
Well, and I do think that's when, like, it's funny because you show up as the adult in the room sometimes, like actually, like in a really great way. I think it's interesting too, because like, as if you kind of like look at the whole world of like making things, back to even you making the decision around, do I go into this career? Where's the fear come from? I think once you kind of open the doors up for people and let them do the things that they're super good at. Mm-hmm. I personally love working alone. And actually, David Sladen told me this phrase that he said, Jay, you like working alone and you like working with other people who like working alone. And I thought that was really funny because it's kind of true. But I do realize, and there's this notion of, have I ever talked to you about design maturity?
No.
That's like when you start getting to this point in your career where you'll ask yourself, why am I doing? What am I doing? Oh. How many people have reached design maturity in here? Yeah. There is a funny moment where you go like, why am I even doing this? Like, what's the ultimate, you have a bigger...
About like life?
Well, more about like the work. Why am I doing the work? And you're like, oh, how do I get it out of me being like subjective about it? And it is interesting because I do know now, and this is part of my design maturity, that letting other people into the creative process usually strengthens things. I think I had a high degree of like, it's gonna run amok, I won't be able to control it, it won't be me. Mm-hmm. And now I'm realizing like design isn't, it's not that I'm just realizing this, but design isn't about me or you. It's the thing we're trying to
But
push.
Some people can just like butt out, Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, hey, you don't have the authority.
Yeah, no. But yeah, I agree.
But there is an interesting thing in that where it is, and I think that's an agency thing too, is like a lot of times there is a structure to the room, if you will, in decision making. You're like, I remember the first time I was in a meeting where I heard like, a strategy or an account person started contributing to creative, and I looked over at the creative director and I was like, oh shit, they're gonna get it. And they actually kind of listened to it, and I was like, oh, that's kind of awesome, because points of view can come from everywhere to a degree.
To a degree. No.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to, we do this thing called lightning round.
Okay.
And I'm gonna give you a word or two, and we're just gonna see how you react to it.
Okay.
So copy or concept?
Concept.
Workwear or business casual?
Whoa.
This is so we did have a phone-in question from the audience. MIA Paul, science or ritual?
Science.
Okay, really? Why?
Okay, so sorry, Josh, this is going to be offensive to you. I'm a disgusting human being that prefers an energy drink in the morning, like I would love a White Monster, but I'm currently on Celsius and Alani Nu, to the ritual of the coffee that grows in dirt. if you look at the side of a Celsius, it's like, there's just a lot of science, like this is going to help you with your day. There's like facts. Coffee, I don't know.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Valid. Grid or no grid? You and I talked a little bit about this.
Oh, I wish I understood what a grid is.
I think a lot of people are trying to figure it out. But it was funny because you were like, I don't know. And then, yeah. Daphne, you got props in our grid discussion, by the way.
I was like, Daphne knows what a grid is. I don't know what a grid is. I feel like so inept.
SF, Boulder, New York, or New Jersey?
New Jersey.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because there's green and it's open skies. And I'm from Princeton, New Jersey, so it's very pretty and idyllic there. And then you just get on the train, you go to New York, and you're like, whoa, I'm in New York. And then you get to leave. Yeah.
Learning on the job or learning in school?
On the job.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, you gotta get paid to learn.
Big time, yeah. I don't know, and it's funny because I'm faculty here. I did not learn in school. I took jobs so that I'd be like, I need to go figure out how to apply
I also
this.
just hate fake work.
Yeah.
And I hate that in jobs too, when they're like, just come up with some extra ideas. And you're like, are they gonna happen? Are they real? Mm-hmm. Which is nice about going in-house on a brand side. Everything's very real.
Yes, or it will get used at some point.
Yeah.
Too. You're like, you build some arsenal. Like I've seen this happen.
Yes.
Build a brand or define a campaign?
Build a brand. Way more fun.
Trust your gut or trust the grid?
Come on, the gut.
This one's
Stretch that type. It's fine.
Yeah, just squeeze it out.
It'll fit.
The typographer didn't care. High heels or high tops?
High-heeled tops.
Yeah. I figured you'd hybrid it.
Yeah.
Last one. What's something on your desk that would surprise us?
Not the energy drinks. My desk.
Your desk is
At work.
kind of crazy.
I have.
This is a work desk.
My work desk?
Work desk.
There is a hiding SIS Rego protein bar that me and a coworker hide from each other because it's disgusting and it will cause gastrointestinal pain. So neither of us want to eat it, so we just hide it for the other person to find. And when you find it, you have to rehide it. So I haven't found it. It's at my desk somewhere.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my desk
in
doesn't
the
have that
9
much.
million bottles that are on your desk.
Because the interns this summer were supposed to make me a bottle wall,
I still think that'd be really cool.
and there's not one. So
We
now
need
my
a bottle
desk
wall.
is covered in bottles.
I mentioned in the beginning of the talk that you have this need to do things differently, and I think it is one of your superpowers. I've witnessed it. I've seen you kind of like convince brands to do things they probably would not have done on their own, and you help them move into either upper echelons of just aesthetics, period, or even into spaces where they might be perceived by people who wouldn't have originally been drawn to the brand. And I think like some of the work at the feed is super example, like the Tour de France campaign wasn't bar, athlete. It actually had like, where does this, I think I know the answer, but like, where does like this want to do that kind of work or the push come from?
I think it's like a Russell Crowe quote. It's like, are we not entertained? And I just think like if you're going to spend your time watching things that interrupt the thing you want to be watching, they should be highly entertaining. And they can, and I think I learned this from Jerry Graff at Saatchi. Like you just like say the important line in the brief.
Yeah.
And then you can just do whatever you want. Show the product in the first, like get the boxes that you have checked, like show the product in the first 6 seconds. This is the strategy, just say it again,
Yeah.
And then entertain. And I think a lot of work, especially with like performance marketing and all that stuff, you can get very boring and it's just like in the way.
Yeah.
And then you also just right now, everything is accessible to everyone. So you just get these circles of like, it's not even AI slop. It's people making real things that all are just mimicking each other. So sometimes I have a real like a reaction to like, let's not do that at all, which is what like the TV program Endurance Freaks was like, especially like living in the cycling world where everything just started feeling the same, using the same cadence and the same music and the same like, whoa, epic. I was like, I want to do MTV Cribs like style, like just like raw. And I think I just always am like kind of my own type of counterculture, but not like punk rock.
Yeah.
I'm like pop culture counterculture, where I'm always trying to bounce off where we are and just do the opposite of what we're seeing rather than playing in it.
Particularly in a specific industry.
Yeah,
you know?
like I just don't like, I have no problem borrowing from culture.
Right.
And, the Endurance Freaks things was a play on an Attenborough thing of like, but then it was like, well, then let's not just do like slow in the
Feed the
savannah.
animals.
The feed
Please
the
feed the
animals.
animals,
Yeah,
yeah.
the please, for the feed, the campaign. It was like, well, let's take that, but let's not just go all like Earth documentary. Then let's turn it up and put crazy drum beats and like EDM music behind it. So it's just not doing the same thing and is engaging.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just like borrowing from genres and smashing them together.
I do think that's a core trait of creative people in general, designers specifically, as I had an art director that worked for me, and he used to say, oh, we're cultural aggregators. And he would like look at things that weren't necessarily super interesting to him, but he would almost archive them so he could reuse them. And I think that's, I look at you and you're very interested in things, and I see like pop culture references show up. And I think that makes it hip and engaging and cool. I know even that the Please Feed the Animals campaign within my own house, the Tour de France is on almost 24 hours a day, but like people actually would
So
stop
much.
and watch that ad because
Every
it wasn't
time?
bars, it was
Yeah.
like funny and it would grab your attention. I think also when people talk about unconventional ideas, that I hate the word like thinking out of the box, the ones that succeed in that, and you were talking about Jerry Graff, I think that a lot of times what they've circumvented is the traditional route to finding the keyword in the brief and arriving at that. Because I haven't seen you really do anything that, as unhinged as they might seem. I could always be like looking at it and go, yeah, that's still tied to strategy, especially if you like, you kind of have, in some of the work I've seen you do in meetings and things that like, you've talked about, hey, this is about finding new audiences or getting more people to engage with us and want to sign up and blah, all those kind of things, right? You want new people. That's part of business. And I think that some of the decisions that you've made moving it out of super jock land is kind of smart. But some people would think it's unconventional. But to me, it's like...
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to push people out of their comfort zone. Like, it's very easy to do something that like looks nice and feels nice and has nice, I don't know, just like feels warm and cozy.
Yeah.
But jarringness can get a reaction. And, like very early, I may have been at like my third job, because we were the only girl team, my partner and I at the time, we got put on a panty liner thing because they needed an extra team.
Yeah.
And we did like the thing where we just like restated the strategy in the beginning, and it was a panty liner walking into an audition to be a pad, because it was a panty liner that was 10 times as absorbent. And the line in the brief said,
The confidence
this
of
panty
this.
liner is just as absorbent as a pad. So we had this panty liner lining up for an audition. She walks onto stage like this, and she goes, "Hi, I'm here to play the part of the pad." And then they do like a flash dance, and they would pour that blue liquid on the pad, and the pad would go like this. And she goes, "See, I'm 10 times as absorbent." And it went to testing. It was made in an animatic, which is when they like kind of draw these cartoonish version, and it went to testing. And we just kept scoring like for recall. And we had like one where then she goes on like this Wendy Williams style show, and there's a bunch of tampons in the audience, and they're swinging their strings.
Yeah.
Like there was 3 different spots. They're somewhere on my Vimeo, the animatics. They just kept scoring off the charts, and the client was like, shoot, because we were beating the one where the panty liner falls down and then it blooms open like a flower, and then it rains on the flower and it spins around and it turns out it's like a panty liner. I don't know. It was like what actually ended up playing, but we kept winning. And
Even in testing?
In testing, because all we did was like reread the brief.
Yeah.
So we were so strategically on point, and it was so jarring. It was very pink. We had pink, everything was pink and blue, and it was like very on brand. They didn't make it because they were scared.
Terrified,
But,
I bet.
Wimps. But I don't know, I think now they probably would have made it.
Yeah.
At the time.
Especially with the amount of channels you could put it into.
But this was probably like 2009 or 2010. Like no one would do it. But I think I was always just looking to be like, okay, women like talk shows. Wendy Williams was like so popular then. Flashdance, everyone loves that.
Why
Like
not?
that blue liquid, what is it? Let's make it funny. Let's make a, yeah. And so like, I thought it was just like, I just wanted to be entertaining. Cause like when I watched those tampon and pad commercials from the early 2000s, you're just like,
Come on.
what
You're
is
like,
this?
come on.
Like, you know, it was all like the girls stretching in white and no leaks. And and so I was like, let's just entertain. Like, if we're going to talk about panty liners, like, what is a panty liner? I did learn about the 5 types of female fluid. And if you want to know about them, I can talk to you later.
This is the part of the conversation where you have told me about learning just ridiculous things from freeze-dried food to
Yeah.
and then all the beverage shit too. When you're kind of like trying to sell some of these ideas, the thing that's always interesting to me is like, I think when you see these ideas that make it out into the public, somewhere along the way, creative leadership had this vision. But there's a selling technique, right, that happens particularly internally. Do you feel like it's harder in your, whether this is in an agency or working for a brand, do you know, the creative group usually sits off as its own entity, right? Do you feel like it's harder for the voice of like creative leadership to be like heard at the same level as more traditional roles within an organization like finance or sales?
Yeah, I think sometimes, I mean, and I think it's something I'm working on with my career coach, life coach, lady, is to come off as more professional, which is why I'm wearing a collared shirt.
Yeah.
Where sometimes I feel like they're like, oh, look at the little silly creatives just like giggling in the corner, having their little jokes, like, you know, on a shared Figma board, putting penises in people's faces or something. And, but I do think, and I made a whole presentation that I'm hoping that I can present to my leadership team. That is why, if you let creative in the room when a project starts, sometimes you can solve some of the problems earlier. Like, I mean, even if it's like a trade show booth, it shouldn't be like, okay, we have this thing and we need these. We shouldn't just be executors. And sometimes I think at agencies, sometimes when you're working with a brand, you come as just an executor. Some really great brands come to you as a problem solver. And, but that's something I think right now that I'm trying to show them that there's value. Creative can help you solve a problem, and thank you. And it doesn't just have to be an execution of like, fill this 1080 by 1350 or 1440 or 1420, whatever size Instagram decides, box with something on brand.
Yeah, I do think brands like it, and it's all brand contingent too. But I do think brands ride a wave in popularity of like, what does design or creative mean in with. What does design creative value mean within the organization? And sometimes it's at a very high level. Like for a long time, you know, design thinking was being integrated to people's like business plans, right, and things like that. And so like it's interesting to hear about how you're kind of coming up with some solutions.
Begging for them. No,
well, because it is an interesting, and this is, we're a little biased and where we're coming from, but it can be such a powerful tool within an organization. Because you look at brands that do grab onto design. Target's a pretty good example of that. Like for as consumer as they are, fairly high degree of design, right?
Yeah.
And they really know that too.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that it's such a tool as much as marketing and media. And if you have an idea that's strategically sound, it can help inform smarter decisions for media buying or placement and who you're trying to target. If it just comes from a place, but if all that gets decided and then you're just like fill in the blank, you can feel a bit handcuffed at times, or you just feel like, sure, here you go. But, you know, and I felt, you know, one of the reasons I went in-house to a brand was because I felt at agencies often all that thinking gets done. And then they come to you and they're like, we need the tiniest pixel size ever banner ad to run on
Facebook or
to run these things for this Dollar General store, you know, and you're like, but why?
Yeah.
But why? And you're like, I think maybe I'm just too curious and I'm too nosy and I needed to see more, and it just made me so antsy to be like, sure, that's stupid. Here you go. You know, like a little curmudgeon-y. But I'm too curious to just be given like to only see this much of a business. So going in-house somewhere, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now I understand maybe why you were giving me that, because I am not the most important problem you have today.
Yeah. Well, and I think when we started the program here, and I've seen, you know, when I got out of design school 100 million years ago, that if you would go in-house, if you couldn't get a job at an agency. And I actually see the almost complete opposite these days. Like a lot of people want to go work in-house because working directly for the brand, you have one problem you're working on. You might have a million problems within that one problem, but it's like you said, and that was the interesting thing for me to start to understand why so many people were going in-house is like they wanted to own more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fake work, no fake work.
Yeah.
Unless it just gets postponed to a later date. Yeah.
When you think about your creative legacy, do you think it's more about what you've made or like how you've grown over time?
Ooh. I think for me, it's definitely how I've grown over time. I was a very shy kid with like lots of secret imaginary worlds. And now I'm definitely more, I mean, even when you're selling work, like you can't just be like, so we're gonna have this tampon and it's gonna be in the audience and it's gonna be swinging its string or something like that. Yeah. Like you have to like be a little psychotic when you're selling it. And that definitely brought out the part that used to happen behind like in my little secret worlds where I'd be like,
you filmed your own TV shows at some point in your childhood. So like, it's not surprising that door got opened.
So I think just seeing me kind of like feel more bold in my voice, like to articulate things and to be silly or stupid.
Or smart,
you know, but like just act and do what you want. And now I'm working on how to like dial that back just like a little bit at the right times.
Right.
Release it. I think it's just watching myself grow because as Jay mentioned, my dad recently put I had a video camera when I was like 8 years old through high school, and I would film everything with like even me doing homework. I'd turn it into a show of how you do your math problems. And then I'd take you on a tour of my room and how I cleaned it and I arranged. So my parents recently gave me this, and I am the same person, like same person.
I heard your little guy is the same person.
Yeah, and there's facial expressions and things he says where I'm like, whoa, don't give that kid a camera.
Yeah, wait till they get big.
Yeah.
That'll really scare you. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
you
you.
were awesome. Appreciate it.